Hello, brothers and sisters, and welcome back to another 28 days and 28 verses. Today we're going to be looking at a verse out of Galatians chapter 6. Before we do, I want to reflect on yesterday. Yesterday we were looking at Matthew chapter 11, verse 28, where Christ says, "Come unto me, all you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest." He speaks of the rest that he will give us, how he will bear our burdens. We're going to speak of bearing burdens today. As I look at today's verse, it reminds me of a situation that took place many years ago. I was with a young man who was discipling. We were at a state park and had been walking around just hiking some of the back trails that day. As we talked about the things of God, as we talked about this young man and his walk with the Lord. As our journey was coming to an end and we were returning to the vehicle, I noticed a bird in the top of a tree. And what really caught my attention was that bird had been in the top of that tree when we started our journey. So now I examined the situation a little closer, and it seemed that something had caught the bird in this little sapling. And so, as I say, not to say tree makes it seem big, it's just a little sapling. So I probably aren't supposed to do this in a state park, so I won't say where it was. I pulled out my Swiss Army knife. I have my Swiss Army knife on me today. I pulled it out and I started cutting away at the little sapling. And eventually I was able to bend it over to the point that we could reach the bird. We found that this bird was all entangled in fishing line. And so while the young man took my tweezers from my Swiss Army knife and pulled at the fishing line, I would take my knife and, holding the bird in one hand, knife in the other, I would cut away the fishing line and he'd pull more out. Now, the bird just sat there peacefully, right? Oh no, the bird was pecking at my hand and snapping at it the whole time. I mean, clawing me with its one free foot. It was not a pleasant experience for me or the bird. But after a while, the young man said, "There's no more fishing line." The bird was free. And so I held my hand up and released the bird, and he flew away with great speed and freedom. And that's what today's verse really speaks of, is us helping one another, us helping our brothers and sisters in the body of Christ. So let's look at Galatians chapter 6. We're going to look at verse 2. So Galatians 6, verse 2 says, "Bear one another's burden, and thereby fulfill the law of Christ." So bear one another's burdens, and thereby fulfill the law of Christ. This is about others, not self. You know, if in starting out that process of trying to free this little bird, if I had held the bird in my hand and he pecked me and I'd said, "Well, forget this," and just left the bird there entangled in the fishing line, the bird would not be with us today. Probably might not be alive right now, but that's beside the point. The bird would have died right there. What of those in the church? When we see somebody ensnared and entangled in sin, are you willing to reach out and help them? It said fulfill the law of Christ. So what is this law of Christ? Christ says in John chapter 13, verse 34, he says, "I am giving you a new commandment, that you love one another just as I have loved you, that you also love one another." Christ was willing to suffer for us. He was willing to go to the cross for us because of his love for us. So what are we willing to do for one another? Are we willing to be pecked at, to be scratched at as we try to free somebody? That was the love that Christ had for for the church? What love do we have for one another? What love do we have for the church? It's something to think about, something to pray about today. And as you look at this passage again, out of Galatians chapter 6, verse 2, I want you to think of those who have reached out and helped you, those who have encouraged you throughout the years, maybe those who challenged you in a path that you were going, and their gentle correction brought you back to where you were supposed to be, or maybe even brought you into a deeper place, into a deeper walk with Christ. So Galatians chapter 6, verse 2, bear one another's burdens, and thereby fulfill the law of Christ. Well, brothers and sisters, I do thank you for tuning in. I want to thank each of you also for your thumbs up and for your comments. Though I've not been reposting the comments, I have been reading them, and they are very encouraging. They give me fuel to continue doing this every day. I really appreciate it. Thanks again. Till tomorrow.